My name's Mark, I'm 34, and I met my wife Natalie about 9 years ago. We were both at a friend's housewarming party in Arlington. One of those loud, slightly overcrowded nights where people spill onto balconies with cheap beers and Bluetooth speakers. She was there with a mutual friend of the host, standing near the kitchen, picking pineapple off a slice of pizza and laughing about it. We got to talking, just a casual back and forth, and ended up tucked into the corner of the living room for most of the night. It wasn't fireworks or some dramatic movie moment. It was just easy, and that he stayed with us. We started dating a week later. First it was dinners and long walks around the city, then weekends spent bouncing between each other's apartments. It didn't feel rushed. It just made sense. She had this calm confidence that balanced out my overthinking, and I made her laugh in that way that made me feel like I was doing something right. Within 6 months, we moved in together. That first apartment was nothing fancy, one-bedroom walk-up, too hot in the summer, too cold in the winter, but it was ours. We made it a home. 2 years after that, I proposed during a weekend in Asheville. We were sitting on the porch of a small cabin, wrapped in blankets and drinking coffee as the fog rolled through the trees. I didn't do anything elaborate. I just asked her, and she said yes without hesitation. It was quiet. Perfect. Exactly us. We got married the following spring in a small ceremony with close friends and family. Simple, heartfelt, no frills. It felt like we were stepping into something solid, not flashy, not complicated, just steady. That's what I always thought we were, steady. We bought a house a year later in a quiet neighborhood not far from the city. 3 bedrooms, lots of light, a small yard out back. She picked most of the furniture. I handled the tools and the lawn. It was a good setup. Natalie worked remotely in branding and social media for a fitness company. She had a great eye for aesthetics, always did. And I had been climbing the ladder at a logistics company where I'd started as a coordinator and worked my way up to operations manager. My boss, Darren, had taken a liking to me early on and opened doors when he saw I could handle pressure. I worked hard, and it paid off. The job kept me busy, but it let us live comfortably. Our days had a rhythm to them. Coffee in the mornings, late dinners during the week, weekend errands, brunches with friends, and the occasional short trip when we could manage the time. Evenings were usually low-key, something on Netflix, a glass of wine, maybe a puzzle on the coffee table if we were feeling ambitious. She liked candles, playlists, fresh flowers. I liked that our life felt lived in but intentional. We talked about taking a big trip someday, Italy, maybe Greece, and starting a family once things settled down with work. We had plans, shared calendars, grocery lists, and lazy Sundays. It felt good, familiar, built on trust. At least, that's what I believed. If you had asked me back then how I felt about my life, I probably would have told you I was lucky. Not in some cheesy, over-the-top way, but in that quiet, simple way people mean it when things just work. Natalie and I had built something stable, something low-stress, something that felt like it had room to grow. Our weekdays were busy but predictable. I was usually out the door by 7:15, heading into the office. Natalie worked from home most days, and I'd usually find her already at her desk in the spare room when I came back for lunch or got home early. She had her routines, green smoothies in the morning, yoga videos playing on the TV by 10 a.m., client calls scattered through the afternoon. She was organized but flexible, and honestly, she was great at what she did. She always had a project or a brand concept to talk about, and she'd run her ideas by me, even if it wasn't really my world. I liked that she brought me into it. We didn't have kids yet. It was something we'd talked about, but we were taking our time. There was no pressure, just that shared idea that someday we'd make room for it. For now, we focused on the life we had. The house, the dog, weekend trips to see friends or family. We had a solid circle, a few couples we did dinners with, some coworkers turned good friends, a neighbor or two who'd stop by on Saturdays when we grilled in the backyard. Natalie always made sure the house looked nice when people came over. She had a thing for candles and matching tableware, and somehow it never felt overdone. Even when we weren't doing much, there was comfort in our rhythm. Grocery runs on Sunday mornings. Coffee on the porch when the weather was good. Movie nights where we never finished the movie because we'd end up talking about something totally unrelated halfway through. She liked quiet evenings with a glass of wine and music playing in the background. I liked that too. It made the house feel alive, even when nothing big was happening. Work kept me busy, but not overwhelmed. Darren, my boss, had started giving me more responsibility managing vendor accounts, overseeing shipments for larger clients, and even helping train a few junior staff. He trusted me, and I took pride in that. I never brought work stress home if I could help it, and Natalie always appreciated that. She said she felt like she could exhale when I was around, like I brought calm into the house. Finances were steady. We split things fairly. I handled most of the bills and investments. She covered groceries and anything house-related. We weren't swimming in luxury, but we didn't need to be. We had enough for dinners out, occasional flights to visit her sister or my parents, and enough left over to start saving for something bigger, a trip, maybe a renovation. Life felt manageable. Predictable. Good. That's the word I kept coming back to, good. It wasn't perfect. No life is. But it felt real. Mutual. Built on something we both believed in. And if there were cracks, I didn't see them. Not then. Looking back on those years, what strikes me most is how full everything felt. Not in a dramatic, sweeping way, just in the small, satisfying kind of way that makes everyday life feel like it means something. We had routines, sure, but they didn't feel like ruts. Our days had texture, a kind of quiet rhythm that felt earned. Natalie and I had our favorite spots, a breakfast place a few blocks from the house where we always ordered the same thing. Her, the avocado toast with red pepper flakes. Me, the sweet potato hash. We used to sit on the patio on Sunday mornings, sipping coffee and people watching like retirees. We talked about the week ahead, about stupid social media trends, about which one of us was finally going to clean out the garage. I didn't know then that I'd miss those mornings so much. She liked plants. We had too many, but I didn't mind. The kitchen windowsill looked like a greenhouse. She gave each one a name, and she talked to them when she watered them. It made her happy, so I helped her hang shelves for even more of them. Little things like that filled our house, cozy, curated, personal. She had an eye for detail, and I had the hands to make it all happen. It worked. We vacationed once or twice a year, nothing extravagant. A long weekend in Charleston, a quiet cabin near Shenandoah, a few days in New York when her company had a brand conference. She always planned everything down to the hour, and I was fine with just showing up. That was our dynamic in a nutshell. She steered, I steadied. And I liked it that way. It made me feel needed, valuable. Evenings were our time. After work, we'd meet in the kitchen, her still in yoga pants and a hoodie, me loosening a tie I never liked wearing. She'd talk about her clients. I'd talk about the warehouse drama or Darren's newest efficiency plan. We'd cook together, sometimes with music playing, sometimes in silence. It didn't matter. The comfort was in the company. And then, the couch. Same spots every time. She curled up with a throw blanket. I stretched out with a beer. We watched shows she usually picked, and I usually pretended to care about. We didn't touch our phones much during those hours. We were present. Or at least, I thought we were. She was affectionate. Playful. She still kissed me on the cheek when she walked past. Still reached for my hand under the table when we went out. We'd been married for over 4 years by then, and things hadn't gone stale the way people always warned they would. If anything, we'd settled in comfortably, quietly, like a pair of worn-in shoes that still fit just right. I had no reason to question anything. No reason to think that our life, the one we built together, piece by piece, was anything other than real. But that was about to change. It started like any other Thursday evening. I had just gotten home from work, loosened my tie, and was halfway through pouring us both a glass of wine when Natalie brought it up. She was leaning against the counter, scrolling through her phone, barefoot, wearing one of those oversized hoodies that hung just right off her shoulder. Casual. Unbothered. So, Claire and the girls are planning a little trip next month, she said. A long weekend. Nothing fancy. Just the beach. I think I want to go. I looked up. Yeah? Where at? Outer Banks, probably, she replied, flipping through something on her screen. It's just for 3 nights. One of Claire's friends has a rental connection. Super cheap. I'd split it with them, but I'd need to book soon. It didn't seem like a big ask. She'd gone on girls' trips before, short, harmless, often filled with too much wine and fuzzy Instagram stories. I nodded. You should go. You've been working nonstop. You deserve it. She smiled, tucked her phone into her back pocket, and came over to hug me from behind. You're the best. I'll send you the info. I was thinking maybe $500 to cover the rental, food, and whatever else. It wasn't a small amount, but it wasn't unreasonable either. We had the savings, and like always, I trusted her. No reason not to. I transferred the money that night without asking any more questions. Over the next week, she dropped little mentions of the trip into casual conversation. I need a new swimsuit, she said one day. Should I pack a dressy outfit just in case we go out the next? She even teased me about how I'd manage the house without her. Try not to burn the kitchen down while I'm gone, she laughed, and I rolled my eyes like I always did. The morning she left, I carried her suitcase down to the car. She kissed me like nothing was different, waved out the window, and promised to text me when they arrived. Don't miss me too much, she said. I watched her drive away, feeling nothing but content. I spent that weekend catching up on yard work, ordering food she didn't like, and finishing a show she'd lost interest in weeks earlier. We texted here and there, nothing deep, just quick check-ins. I asked how the beach was. She said relaxing. I asked if they were staying in or going out. She said both. And I believed her. Because why wouldn't I? She came back from the trip on a Monday afternoon, tanned and glowing, suitcase in hand and sunglasses still perched on her head. I remember opening the front door and thinking she looked almost too relaxed, like someone who'd stepped out of a spa rather than a 4-day beach trip with a bunch of friends. I hugged her, helped carry her bag upstairs, and listened as she rattled off quick highlights: the seafood place they found on night 2, a bar crawl that got cut short by rain, a hammock on the porch where she apparently read for hours. It all sounded fine. Normal. Just enough detail to feel real. But the way she told it, something felt different. Like she was performing the story rather than reliving it. She barely showed me any photos. Said most of the good ones were on Claire's phone. She took a bunch. I'll have her send them to me, she said. But they never came. And I didn't press. Not at first. But something didn't sit right. Over the next few days, little things kept sticking in my head. She'd say one thing, then casually contradict herself later without realizing. We stayed in the first night, turned into, we hit the bar right away. Claire and I shared a room, turned into, I barely saw her, honestly. They were small inconsistencies, but they added up. I didn't say anything, just nodded, smiled, and told myself I was overanalyzing. But I started watching a little closer. I noticed she was more on edge than usual, checking her phone more often, keeping it face down, jumping when it buzzed, even during dinner. And when I'd ask something casual, how's Claire doing? Or, you ever hear from that other girl, Jess? She'd give these clipped answers like I'd asked the wrong thing. Not hostile, just careful, like she was walking across a rope and didn't want to lose balance. She started dressing up more, even on days she wasn't going anywhere. Lipstick on a Wednesday. A new blouse she said she got on sale. Just felt like looking nice, she shrugged. And I believed her. I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't ignore the shift. There was a different energy in the house now. She was still present, but something was tucked just beneath the surface, just out of reach. Even at night, when she curled into bed next to me, I felt the difference. She'd roll away more often. Her phone stayed under her pillow. She'd say she was tired, and I believed that, too. But the tiredness felt less like exhaustion and more like avoidance. Still, I didn't push. I told myself not to be that guy. The insecure husband reading too much into nothing. Everyone's allowed to change a little after a vacation. Everyone's allowed to keep a few things to themselves. But that voice, the one that had always helped me stay calm, stay logical, started to get quieter. And something else was starting to take its place. The days kept moving, but something about the house felt still, like we were inside a painting instead of living a life. Natalie had always been good at slipping back into routine, but this time, her rhythm didn't quite match mine. We still shared the same space, ate the same meals, watched the same shows. But the feel of everything had shifted. And I couldn't explain it in words that didn't sound petty or paranoid. She wasn't cold, exactly. Not distant in an obvious way. But she was edited, measured. Like she was running our life through a filter that kept anything too real from getting through. We'd be talking about dinner plans and suddenly she'd zone out mid-sentence, lost in her own thoughts. Or I'd come into the room and she'd switch tabs on her laptop so fast it looked like instinct. Every now and then, I'd catch her smiling at her phone, not laughing, just this soft, private smile I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. I started paying attention to her language. How often she said, I, instead of we. How often she asked what I was doing instead of telling me what she was doing. I asked her one evening if she wanted to have friends over for a game night, something we used to do often, and she shrugged. I don't really feel like hosting, she said. No follow-up. No alternate suggestion. Just disinterest. Like she'd mentally stepped out of that version of our life without even opening the door. Work wasn't helping either. Things at the office had gotten oddly tense. Darren, my boss, had been colder toward me since before Natalie's trip. I assumed it was just pressure from upper management, But there was a new weirdness to it. He started leaving me out of meetings I'd normally be in, giving projects I usually manage to others. Once, I walked past his office and saw him on the phone. He turned away from the glass as soon as he saw me. I told myself I was imagining it. I had to be. Still, it made me feel like the ground under my feet was shifting, both at work and at home. But I didn't know where to stand anymore. I tried to bring it up to Natalie, gently. I said, "You seem distracted lately. Is everything all right?" And she smiled, that polite, polished smile she'd been wearing more and more, and said, "I'm fine, babe. Just adjusting back to real life. The trip was a lot." Then she kissed me and asked if I wanted to order Thai. And that was the thing. She always gave just enough. Just enough affection to make me feel guilty for doubting. Just enough normalcy to question my instincts. Just enough love to make me wonder if I was the one pulling away. But at night, when she turned away from me and stared at the ceiling like she was waiting for the silence to end, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I didn't know what was happening, but I was starting to understand that I didn't really know her anymore either. There's a point where suspicion stops feeling like a thought and starts feeling like a weight, something you carry through the day, into every conversation, into every glance across the dinner table. That's where I was. I hadn't said anything. I hadn't confronted Natalie. I hadn't even admitted out loud that I thought something was wrong. But it was in me now. In my posture. In the way I started watching instead of listening. In the way I felt more like a guest in my own house than a husband. I started noticing the patterns. Or maybe just the cracks in them. Natalie had always been organized, a planner, someone who kept her calendar tidy and her time accounted for. But suddenly, there were gaps. Days where she wouldn't say much about what she'd done. New errands that popped up in the middle of the day. A friend she was suddenly meeting for coffee, a friend I hadn't heard her talk about in over a year. I told myself it was harmless. I told myself people change. But something about it all just felt rehearsed. She had a new way of speaking, a way of skimming the surface of conversations instead of diving into them the way she used to. I checked the credit card statements. Not because I was trying to catch her in anything, at least that's what I told myself, but because I needed reassurance. Just some normal purchases, something to tell me I was making this all up. And for the most part, that's what I saw: groceries, takeout, a couple of clothing orders. But then there was a charge from a boutique hotel 3 hours away. Same weekend as her girls' trip. It was under Natalie's name. No mention of a group booking. No sign of multiple people. Just one room, one transaction. When I asked her about it casually, she didn't even blink. "Claire made the reservation, remember? She used my name since I sent the deposit." Her tone was smooth, convincing, but too fast, like she already had the answer loaded and ready. I nodded, said nothing. But inside, something shifted. A thread pulled tight. I started noticing her phone habits more. She never left it unattended anymore. Took it into the bathroom. Slept with it face down. She turned off notifications for some apps. When I asked who she was texting late one night, she said, "Work stuff," and turned her body away before I could see the screen. And still, I didn't press. I didn't want to accuse her. I didn't want to be that guy. But the distance between us had grown so wide, I wasn't even sure how to cross it anymore. Even Darren at work was acting off. He avoided me now. Short emails. Cold expressions. No eye contact. He used to treat me like one of his go-to people. We'd joke, talk through projects, even grab drinks after hours when things weren't so crazy. But now? He barely acknowledged me in the hallway. Meetings I used to lead were suddenly being passed to others without explanation. At first, I chalked it up to corporate politics, maybe a shakeup coming, or maybe he was under pressure. But the tension felt personal. It felt pointed, and I couldn't understand why. I wasn't looking for a smoking gun. I wasn't trying to catch anyone. I just wanted something, anything, to either confirm what I feared or quiet it once and for all. But I was stuck in the middle, trying to pretend that things were still okay while the ground beneath me kept shifting. And Natalie? She played it all perfectly. Still kissed me goodnight. Still asked about my day. Still laughed at my jokes when we had company over. She made sure the image stayed intact. But behind that image, I could feel the truth pressing in like a storm behind a closed window. And I knew, even if I didn't want to admit it yet, that it wouldn't stay hidden much longer. It was late afternoon on a Sunday when it happened. I'd spent most of the day cleaning the garage, one of those tasks you do when you're trying not to think too much. The kind of thing that keeps your hands busy so your mind doesn't drift too far into places you're not ready to go. Natalie had been out all morning. She told me she was running errands, maybe meeting Claire for lunch. I didn't ask many questions. I'd stopped asking by then. It felt easier to pretend things were still simple. Around 4 o'clock, I was in the living room sorting through a box of old cables when I heard the front door open. "Hey babe, I'm back," she called out, casually, like everything was normal. But her voice wasn't alone. Right behind her, stepping into the entryway like he belonged there, was Darren. My boss. He looked directly at me. Cool. Composed. Not even a flicker of discomfort in his face. Natalie didn't flinch either. She dropped her purse on the side table, glanced around like she was looking for a misplaced throw pillow, and said, "We need to talk." I stood up slowly. My chest felt tight. I couldn't find my voice at first. Darren was wearing jeans and a black sweater, not his usual office attire, but still calculated. Polished. He looked comfortable in my house. That was what burned. I finally managed. "What the hell is this?" Natalie sighed, not with guilt, but with irritation. "Don't make this harder than it has to be, Mark." Harder than it has to be? I looked at her, then at him. I couldn't process it fast enough. My mind kept short-circuiting, trying to catch up with the fact that the woman I married and the man I worked for had just walked into my home together, unapologetic, smug. "I didn't want you to find out this way," she added. "But I'm tired of pretending." "Pretending what?" I said, my voice quieter than I expected. "That we're still a couple," she snapped. "That you're still someone I respect." I flinched like she'd slapped me. Not because she yelled, she didn't, but because of the words. Cold. Sharp. Like she'd been rehearsing them for weeks. Darren stepped forward then. Calm, like a man presenting a business proposal. "Mark, we've all seen this coming for a while. It's better you hear it now." I started, but I didn't even know what I was about to say. Yell? Demand an explanation? Beg? Natalie crossed her arms. "You've been holding me back for years. You're boring, Mark. Predictable. Safe. And I'm done living in a version of my life that feels like a waiting room." Then came the next blow. Darren glanced at his watch and added, almost like an afterthought, "By the way, we're letting you go. HR will send over the paperwork tomorrow." I stared at him. "You're firing me." "It's nothing personal," he said. "You've been distracted. This isn't the right fit anymore." I laughed. Just once. Not because it was funny, but because it was so unreal it had crossed into absurdity. Natalie picked up her overnight bag and headed toward the door. "I'll be staying at his place for a while. Don't wait up." Then they left. Together. Like they hadn't just set fire to everything I thought my life was. I stood there in the silence that followed, surrounded by the artifacts of a life I thought was still mine. The framed wedding photos, the dinner table we built, the pillow she picked out for the couch. And I realized none of it meant anything to her anymore. Maybe it never had. She didn't just leave me. She left with him. And I wasn't ready for the rage that came next. There's a kind of anger that doesn't roar. It doesn't scream or throw things or beg for answers. It just sits inside you, dense and quiet, like a second spine made of cold steel. That's what I felt when the front door closed behind Natalie and Darren. Not disbelief anymore. Not sadness. Just clarity. The kind that only comes when the people you trusted the most show you exactly what they think you're worth. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stood in that living room and looked around at the pieces of the life we built, the life I held together while she was off sleeping with my boss, and I felt everything inside me crystallize. She wanted out? Fine. But she wasn't walking away with the story she thought she'd get. Not the life. Not the comfort. Not the silence. First, I went upstairs and emptied every drawer that had her name on it. Clothes, toiletries, accessories, all of it. I tossed every item out the bedroom window onto the front lawn, one armload at a time. I didn't care if the neighbors watched. I wanted them to. Let them see what she left behind. Let her come back to the reality of it in daylight. Then the car. Mine. I'd bought it in my name, paid every cent, and handed her the keys like it was a gift. I kept the spare. That night, I drove it to a friend's place across town, locked it in his garage, and stripped out everything of hers inside. Lip gloss in the console. A cardigan in the back seat. Gone. I opened our shared accounts. Emptied the one she had access to. Everything I'd earned, the savings I built through years of work, I transferred out. She could start over with Darren. Let him cover her bills now. But it didn't stop there. No, I wasn't done. I knew Darren's wife, Emily. We'd met several times at company events, exchanged polite small talk, even sat next to each other at the holiday party just a few months ago. I debated whether to tell her, whether to drop this into her life the way they dropped a grenade into mine. But then she texted me out of the blue. Just a simple, "Hey, I heard something happened. Are you okay? And something in me cracked. We talked. Then we met up. Not out of revenge, not exactly. It started with two broken people comparing wreckage. But the more we talked, the more we realized how long this had been happening behind our backs. How stupid they thought we were. How they played us both. One night, after a few drinks and too many memories, we slept together. And the next morning, I didn't feel guilty. I felt calm. Not proud. Not vindicated. Just calm. Like I had taken something back they never thought I could. A piece of control. Of dignity. And when Emily called me 3 weeks later and said she was pregnant, I didn't flinch. I said, if it's mine, I'll do right by it. But either way, he'll know. Then came the final piece. Before I officially handed in my badge and walked out of Darren's company, I made sure the system saw me one last time. I had clearance. I knew how the visa processing software worked. I knew which files Darren was counting on for his upcoming deal. International shipments that required perfect documentation. I didn't do anything blatant. Just enough to misfile 2 critical forms. Just enough for them to get flagged at customs. Delayed. Fined. It wasn't flashy, but it would cost him. And when it did, he wouldn't even know where it came from. I left my ID on the front desk, walked out the front door of that building, and didn't look back. She took everything she thought mattered. I took back what was mine, and I made sure neither of them would forget it. In the weeks that followed, the silence became my closest ally. Not the awkward kind, not the heavy, pressing silence of uncertainty, but the kind that settles after a storm. A clean silence. One that lets you hear your own breath again. I didn't fill it with noise. I didn't chase new distractions or drown myself in fake positivity. I just sat with it. And in that stillness, something started to shift. Slowly, quietly, like a bruise finally fading. The house was mine again. I changed the locks, cleared out the closets, donated what I didn't want to remember, and boxed the rest for storage. I repainted the living room, rearranged the furniture, took down every framed photo that had her smile in it. Not in a fit of rage, but in something more final. A quiet goodbye to the version of my life that no longer existed. There was no ceremony, no closure speech. Just action. Just motion. That was enough. I went back to the gym. Started waking up early again. I cooked my own meals, even when they didn't turn out great. I reconnected with a couple of friends I'd let drift over the years. The kind of people who don't ask too many questions, who just show up with a six-pack and a willingness to sit in silence if that's what the night calls for. I needed that. People who didn't try to fix it, who didn't offer advice, just presence. And then there was Emily. We didn't make a thing of it. We weren't playing house or pretending we were some tragic love story that came full circle. We were just two people trying to breathe again. She kept me updated. Doctor's visits. Scans. She said she didn't expect anything from me, but I told her the truth. I wasn't running. If the baby was mine, I'd be there. And strangely, that conversation felt more honest than anything I'd said to Natalie in the last year of our marriage. I found a new job. Smaller company, more hands-on, less corporate nonsense. It didn't come with a corner office or fancy title, but it came with peace. And right now, peace mattered more than prestige. I didn't need power. I needed clarity. I needed space to be something other than the guy who got cheated on by his wife and fired by his boss. And slowly, I started becoming someone else. Not someone new, exactly, just someone real. Unfiltered. Not performing for a marriage. Not smiling through professional politics. Just a man who learned, the hard way, what he could survive. Some nights, I still thought about her. Not with longing. Not with hate. Just with recognition. She happened. We happened. And that version of me, the man who loved her unconditionally, the man who handed over his trust like a gift, he's gone now. He left the day she walked through that door with Darren. And the man who stood up in his place? He's still standing. I don't think healing looks the way people say it does. It's not a clean timeline. It's not a checklist. It's not something you arrive at, triumphant, with your arms in the air and your heart scrubbed clean. It's quieter than that. More private. It comes in pieces, in the way your shoulders drop 1 inch lower when you wake up in a house that's finally yours again. In the way you start cooking dinner just for yourself and realize that's enough. In the moment you remember what your laugh sounds like when you're not performing for someone who's already left you in their mind. It's been almost a year since Natalie walked out of my life with Darren beside her. I haven't spoken to her since. Not once. She tried, early on, a message here, a call there, but I never answered. There was nothing to say that wouldn't rot whatever peace I was beginning to build. She moved into his second home, or so I've heard. They post pictures, sometimes. I don't look at them anymore. I already know what they're curated snapshots of a lie that started long before they walked through my front door together. Darren lost his contract with a major international client after the visa delays I had a quiet hand in. His business took a hit. I don't feel guilty. He took everything from me thinking he was untouchable. I just reminded him that no one is. Especially not men who play games with other people's lives like they're moving pieces on a spreadsheet. As for Emily, she had a little girl. Healthy. Beautiful. She named her after her grandmother. DNA confirmed what we already suspected. She's not mine. And yet, I still check in. Still send gifts. Still offer help when she needs it. Not because I'm trying to rewrite anything, but because I respect the truth. And when someone offers you honesty after a world full of lies, the least you can do is show up with your eyes open. I met someone recently. Her name's Rachel. We met at a hardware store, of all places. I was replacing a broken kitchen faucet. She was trying to figure out how to build a raised garden bed. We talked for 10 minutes in the lumber aisle and ended up getting coffee after. I don't know what it is yet. I'm not rushing to define it. But there's no pretending with her. No performance. No careful silence. Just conversation. And for the first time in a long time, I'm okay with not knowing where it's going. Because I know who I am now. I'm not the man who got left. I'm not the employee who got fired. I'm not the guy who let people take from him while he smiled and called it love. I'm a man who lost everything and still found something worth building again. And I'll tell you this, I didn't need revenge to move on. I didn't need closure from them. I just needed to choose myself, one morning at a time, until the anger ran out and the peace took its place. So this is it. The last chapter. I didn't win. I didn't lose. I walked away. And that was enough.